what was your interest in this technology and why did you apply it here?
So started here 10 years ago, and we just did a greens renovation, and we started seeing some of the same symptoms that we saw prior to the renovation of just poor rooting, just not able to grow roots, even though we have the budget to really make sure we're throwing what we can at them. And the only thing that didn't change was water. So we started looking into water, got in touch with Ron, and were able to actually measure DO. Before, we had no idea about the dissolved oxygen in our water. It turned out that our well was lower than what can sustain life. 4 parts per million dissolved oxygen is the limit of what can sustain life, and we were pulling at 3. And by the time I got to the end of the system, it was less than that. So when it was in the dark pipe, the oxygen just kept going down. So we started getting in touch with Ron, did a little demo system, and even saw an improvement on that demo system. With the large scale, full scale system, we saw even more improvement with the rooting, and times of the year in the fall where we typically see root reduction, we're still seeing white roots where they're still growing happy even when they shouldn't be.
By our monitoring system, sometimes it's in the 20s.
This morning it was at 38.
Right.
I mean, that's 5 times better than what rainwater is.
Right. And that's a 12-fold increase in the dissolved oxygen content that you had prior.
Absolutely. And that's, given that our season is typically our dry season, all of that is what's being reflected in our soil now. We have just 5 times better than rainwater, 7 times better than what we had prior, being our main source of water for the prime season.
Right, and I think we're seeing that in most of our installs. Our DO number after the installation is significantly higher, almost to the point it's unbelievable for a lot of people that aren't following this.
And the one thing we didn't realize was what the ORP, the oxidation reduction potential, was for our well water. When we fired the system on the first time, our ORP went negative to like negative 300, which was about as bad as you can get. I mean, that ORP's, if you want to simplify it, is the water's ability to clean itself, rid itself of the sulfides, all the bad bacteria, any of the pythium, any of the waterborne funguses that might be present in that water, is all getting eradicated when the ozone hits it. And even though it was still being negative in the output, it was still treating it to the point where we were getting back to 0. And then now we've dialed it in where we're slightly positive once the well kicks on.
Right. So the addition of ozone really helps eliminate the pathogens. What I like about the system too, and maybe you can expound on that, is the detail in the monitoring and all the probes we have, so we get direct information live.
I mean, and all the information we get is all available through the monitoring app we have. So we set alarms for anything. If it's outside the parameters that are normal, we get an alert. So we barely even have to go down and check it.
Right, and we can monitor several different things.
And log it. We can see the graphs of, that was when we first saw it, is that we were able to look back at the night before of the graph when the well kicked on. We saw a huge drop in ORP right around when the well kicked on, and before that first run we had no idea that was going to happen. And that was basically all due to the sulfides in our water, which were oxidized into the sulfates, which I'm thinking we're seeing a color response. It's hard to pin it down. But there's a slight color response to sulfate when applied to the turf.
You know, so far your experience with the systems, the mechanics of the system, has it been functional and reliable?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Basically, we don't have to go and check on it. I mean, being able to see all the probes and all the information through the app and the alarms we have, when we see something out of what's normal, we'll go and check it. Basically, the only thing we've had to go and check and fix is the filter. We suck up some debris from the pond from time to time. That's maybe once a month we have to clean that out, and we just have an extra filter and we rotate it so that we can clean the other one out as we see fit, because we know our morning's typically busy when we're doing that. But other than, I mean, the nanobubble, the actual, what do you even call that? Nanobubble generator? Yeah. The nanobubble generator.
Ultra fine bubble generator.
Okay.
We want to use that term.
The ultra fine bubble generator, we've had, I mean, it's bulletproof. We haven't had to do anything with it. A little bit of maintenance on the compressor, but other than that, it's been very hands off.
So the mechanics of it, the mechanical aspect, it's been very reliable so far for you.
Yeah, mechanically it's been perfect.
Okay, good. Okay. With your experiences, what have you seen, the actual results of the turf grass or the coarse playability?
So the first thing we noticed was that the first thing we did was we wanted to see what our fertilizer requirements were, because we knew it was going to release some nutrients in the soil. It was going to increase the beneficial bacteria in the soil and create an aerobic environment, which broke down a lot of the nutrients that were bound up in organic matter and whatever else was in the soil. So we just kind of backed off and waited to see what we needed to fertilize. We did it as an as-needed basis, and teas and approaches, we kind of went 6 months before we saw anything that we needed to fertilize. Granted, we're doing foliars, we're spoon feeding them bi-weekly, but we were always doing a granular twice or once every 2 months. But that's gone down to twice a year. Basically, we're just doing it before aerification and priming it for season now. Then our bulk apps across fairways and rough is where I think you can really see some savings. We switched to a more organic source. We were doing polyon for the most part, but now we're doing some organic sources from NatureSafe and doing an April app. I had this past summer a June app budgeted, but we just skipped it because we didn't see a need to even apply it. We were still running on what we had, whether it was the fertilizer still breaking down or just the temperature, and we were breaking down stuff in the soil based on microbial activity.
So in your experience, then, there is a reduction of expenses potentially for your inputs.
There's going to be a reduction of expenses. Fertilizer, I think, is where you're going to see the most savings. Fungicides, just all going to be based on your climate. I mean, everybody has those rainy periods where if you're not running the water, it can't help you. So guys in the Southwest, I think it's going to be an absolute game changer for us. Our prime seasons, the dry season for us in Central Florida here, we don't get rain really from November through May, and then the rainy season starts again in June at some point. But for the most part, our season, it's mimicking our irrigation water. So we're able to really control it and make sure we know what's going out.
You know, I know in your system here, we have the ozone injection as well. Can you relate how that affects, let's say, pathogen and disease pressure?
So the ozone, I've tested some fungicide application windows during our dry season. It's really tough in the wet season at our level to give up the security of having a fungicide down. But during our dry season, we pushed some windows to the 28 days, and we were able to do that. Now you get a rain, still you got to be on your toes and make sure you know what Mother Nature is giving you, because once Mother Nature takes over, you're not putting that water out anymore. So you're not killing the pathogens in the soil. You're not killing pathogens in the water. So you still got to be an agronomist to make sure that you know what you're going to be dealing with.
Right. Okay. I got a question. You know, you're in the southeastern part of the country. For courses that are in north of the transition zone or in the northern tier, do you think this technology has a place for them as well?
So yeah, the guys up in the Northeast doing POA, bent grass, I've been out of it for 12, 13 years now, but I know the roots up there are much deeper. So I feel like you can have a much greater potential for the oxygen to be beneficial and for the plant to take it up. It's hard to say. I know for us, I mean, we're growing 2-inch roots, so over 2-inch roots, it's being immensely beneficial to us. So I can only imagine that if you have those 4, 5, 6-inch roots that bentgrass guys do, that it's going to be even more beneficial.
I know you said we've had very little issues with the system, but the few minor ones you had, how was the service by Ron and the team?
The couple minor problems we've had have been just probes getting dirty, and being one of the first systems, Ron was very, very attentive to make sure that they were the ones out here cleaning the probes. I know they're putting teams together to take over the servicing of the compressor, which currently we're still using Kaiser. and I think it's compressed air services to service that. But once that's in-house, that should reduce the cost of that. That was the only real blind side we had, was the cost for servicing the compressor. But once that's in-house, that's going to get even better.
Okay. You know, I know we're developing right now some pH control using, I think it's carbonic acid. Are you familiar with that, and how do you think that's going to impact the system or in courses?
Trying to think how to even start that one. So knowing that they're going to be doing some carbonic acid injection as well to replace some of the acid that we inject. For here, we have a huge bicarb problem, bicarbonates in our irrigation water that end up in the soil, and we're spraying acidic wetting agents. We never really liked injecting the acid. Spraying our way seemed to work better, but if this could be the solution for that, maybe we can get away from these acidic wetting agents, and the wetting agents in general seem to be going down. It seems to just make water work a little better, where we're not having to put wetting agents on the mounds anymore.
Right. My experience here as a member and playing, I've noticed there has been a great reduction in the hand watering here on the course, and maybe it's attributed to that in part.
Yeah, our hand watering has reduced. We used to have to immediately go out after lunch and touch greens back up. It seems like now greens are lasting the majority of the day, as long as we're watering them to where we need them in the morning and everybody checked the spots they need to. A little bit of that I think has to do with our wetting agent, but majority of that I think is due to the water working a little better.
Okay, what this system really does is increase the dissolved oxygen in your water supply, correct? And how does that affect, let's say, the soil?
So the ultrafine bubbles, if you take one of those droplets of water that come out of an irrigation head, you have thousands, if not millions, of these tiny bubbles that are saturated with pure oxygen, because we're injecting pure oxygen, and then ozone as well. So every one of those droplets is going in, infiltrating into the soil. So even in your wet areas where this water typically would create an anaerobic condition, it's now an aerobic condition. So you're still having to deal with compaction, and it's not going to really solve that, but you're not now having an anaerobic area where you're creating black layer and exacerbating the problem that compaction started in the first place.
Right. You're not drowning your roots. Yeah.